It's already the 6th day on the current war going on between Iran, Israel, and of course, United States of America. And if you have been following us religiously on this very channel, you will understand with me, or believe with me rather, that it has been an interesting time. A lot of heartbreaking stories continue to spring up both in Israel, in Iran, and some other neighboring countries which are considered to be the allies of the United States of America. There are a lot of developing stories which are currently trending on the internet space. Yesterday, I talked about why China remains one of the greatest losers from the current war going on in Iran because of their heavy infrastructural investment, both on AI, on energy, and so many others, which has been estimated by experts to worth around $100 billion. Today, as we speak, it is now in the public domain that China is sending a special envoy down to the Middle East, principally to begin the escalation of the war going on in Iran and begin to mediate and chart a new course for a peaceful dialogue instead of military action. Some other news are also saying that the Chinese government is currently fast-tracking the production of their submarines in order to have the capacity to attack the United States of American forces. Well, times are really very interesting. Before we go further to talk about, the doomsday missile testing that United States of American, Air Force has conducted in California, which is one of the nukes, which is considered to be one of the most powerful across the globe. And it is called the ICBM, Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, which is a deterrent for any type of nuclear warhead. Before we get into that very details, make una listen to this news. I dey come.
The Wall Street Journal is reporting that China is now accelerating production of submarines to attack the United States. Closer to home, writing, quote, China has been developing new submarine technology and a bigger, better fleet that is gaining on the United States and its allies, spurring a new undersea arms race in the Pacific. These subs that can strike U.S. from closer to home, the U.S. Navy is warning. Joining me now is Gatestone Institute senior fellow Gordon Chang. Gordon, that is some statement that the Navy has warned us about.
Yes. The Chinese, they don't actually need better submarines. All they need to do is stay close to their shores in what they call the bastion areas, like the Yellow Sea. But obviously, they do want subs to be able to get closer to the U.S. And by the way, we have Chinese submarines in the Arctic, which would be very, very close to Alaska and the homeland. So this is really an important development. And we have got to make sure that we have got the attack subs that can take out those ballistic missile submarines of the Chinese.
It's incredible. The Hudson Institute has reported that China armed Iran with advanced missiles. Every warhead carries Chinese components. We've reported on this program many times that China sends these components to Iran. The guidance systems, the propellant chemistry. China provided air defense systems to Iran. U.S. and Israeli strikes decimated them. And that China invested $100 billion in Iranian infrastructure. Clearly, China is on the side of Iran with all of this, and then they want to send a Mideast envoy to go condemn the attacks today. How do you see this?
Well, first of all,
Similarly, like I said from the introduction, as United States of American government has tested this very doomsday missile, a nuke, which continues to raise dust from across the globe, many continue to speculate. Is the United States of America currently planning or trying to deploy this very intercontinental ballistic missile down to Iran? Well, according to the report we have gotten from the United States of American Air Force of the Global Strike Command, they maintain categorically that this very testing is actually for current and future technological advancement of that very nuke, that very intercontinental ballistic missiles, that it is not for any reason of deployment down to Iran, that this very test has been scheduled years ago before now. Make one watch the video.
Of the U.S. nuclear forces and provide confidence in the lethality and effectiveness of the nation's nuclear deterrent. This launch, designated GT-255, was scheduled years ago and is not in response to world events. It is a key component of a data-driven program that has been in place for decades, involving over 300 similar tests designed to validate the performance of the weapon system. The data collected from these routine tests is essential for ongoing and future force development. Today's test launch used a randomly selected intercontinental ballistic missile pulled from Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota. The missile was transported more than 1,300 miles and reassembled at Vandenberg Space Force Base, California. The ICBM was equipped with multiple targetable re-entry vehicles and traveled approximately 4,200 miles at a speed of more than 15,000 miles per hour to a test range near the Kwajalein Atoll in the Marshall Islands. The ICBM Test and Evaluation Program helps validate the reliability of the nuclear umbrella our allies and partners rely on, eliminating the need to obtain their own nuclear weapons to counter potential adversaries. The 56-year-old Minuteman III is based in Colorado, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, and Wyoming, and will be replaced by the LGM-35A Sentinel. Reporting from Vandenberg Space Force Base, I'm Senior Airman Kevin Hernandez.
Well, what is going on today in Iran has been predicted over 10 years ago, or even more than that. There is a video clip you're about to see shortly, where Marco Rubio, the current Secretary of State to the United States of America, more like a prophecy 10 years ago on what Iran is doing today, that Iran simply wants to get so powerful that the world will dread them, that the world will fear them the same way North Korea is currently being feared across the globe, because they have armed themselves with different calibers of nukes, nuclear warhead. And you know what that means? The existential threat, not only to Israel, but I can tell you categorically, according to so many experts, people from this part of the world, African continent, are also feeling the heat of many of these things. You begin to ask, how does terrorists, for example, in Nigeria, how do they get their money to buy more weapons and more weapons and more weapons? Apart from the fact that in the Nigeria of today, that ransom has become a lucrative, way of making money in Nigeria, kidnapping. These bandits come, kidnap people, and the government pay them in millions, and they in turn also use that money to acquire weapons. But from the onset, who was their sponsor? How did they generate the finances they were using? The video you're about to watch currently from Marco Rubio is going to be an eye-opener. Why what the United States of American government is doing today in Iran is inevitable. Not only because of Israel, but maybe, just maybe, for the world at large. More now, watch the video.
This deal have already been said. I do want to be recorded for history's purposes before I know what was going to happen in regards to this if it goes through. Iran will immediately use the money that it's receiving in sanctions relief to begin to build up its conventional capabilities. It will establish the most dominant military power in the region outside of the United States, and it will raise the price of us operating in the region. They're going to build anti-access capabilities, rockets capable of destroying our aircraft carriers and ships. Continue to build these swift boats that are able to come on us, these fast boats that are able to swarm our naval assets. And they'll make it harder and harder for U.S. troops to be in the region. They'll also work with other terrorist groups in the region to target American servicemen and women. And they may or may not deny that they're involved, but they will target us and raise the price of our presence in the Middle East until they hope to completely pull us out of that region. They'll also continue to build long-range missiles, missiles capable of reaching the United States. Those are not affected by this deal, and they'll continue to build them as they've been doing. And then at some point in the near future, when the time is right, they will build a nuclear weapon. And they will do so because at that point they will know that they have become immune, that we will no longer be able to strike their nuclear...
Could you believe he's been saying this in 2015? Oh my God.
...program because the price of doing so will be too high. This is not just a work of imagination. It exists in the world today. It's called North Korea, where a lunatic possesses dozens of nuclear weapons and a long-range rocket that can already reach the United States. And we cannot do anything about it. An attack on North Korea today would result in an attack on Tokyo, or Seoul, or Guam, or Hawaii, or California. And so the world must now live with a lunatic in possession of nuclear weapons. And this is the goal Iran has as well, to reach a point where they become immune to any sort of credible military threat because the price of a military strike would be too high. And then they become an established nuclear weapons power. And never in the history of the world has such a regime ever possessed weapons so capable of destruction. Iran is led by a supreme leader who is a radical Shia cleric with an apocalyptic vision of the future. He is not a traditional geopolitical actor who makes decisions on the basis of borders or simply history or because of ambitions. He has an religious apocalyptic vision of the future, one that calls for triggering a conflict between the non-Muslim world and the Muslim world, one that he feels especially obligated to trigger. And he's going to possess nuclear weapons. This is the world that we are on the verge of leaving our children to inherit. And perhaps we ourselves will have to share in it.
Oh my God.
So I want to be recorded for history's purposes, if nothing else, to say that those of us who opposed this deal understood where it would lead. And we are making a terrible mistake. And I fear that a passage of this deal will make it even harder for us to prevent it. And I hope that there is still time to change our minds, but here's the good news. Iran may have a supreme leader, but America does not. In this nation, we have a republic. And soon we will have new leaders, perhaps in this chamber, but also in the executive branch. And I pray that on their first day in office, they will reverse this deal and reimpose the sanctions and back them up with a credible threat of military force, or history will condemn us for not doing what needed to be done at this critical moment in the world's history. I yield the floor.
And finally, to ramp it up, news are already out there. Donald Trump, the president of the US, said it categorically himself that Iran's left senior officials are calling him to make a deal on how to end the war. But he told them that it is already too late, that they claim to be tough, that they want to fight. So let's get into battle. Before we finally bring it to a conclusion, listen to that very statement from Donald J. Trump, and we shall conclude from there.
And before we begin, I think I will say a few words about what's going on with respect to our operation in the country of Iran. The United States military, together with the wonderful Israeli partners, continues to totally demolish the enemy far ahead of schedule and at levels that people have never seen before, actually. We're destroying more of Iran's missiles and drone capability every single hour, knocking them out like nobody thought was possible. As soon as they set off a missile, within 4 minutes, the launcher gets hit. They don't know what's happening. But we have the greatest military anywhere in the world. Their Navy is gone. 24 ships in 3 days. That's a lot of ships. Their anti-aircraft weapons are gone. So they have no air force. They have no air defense. All of their airplanes are gone. Their communications are gone. Missiles are gone. Launches are gone. About 60% and 64% respectively. Other than that, they're doing quite well. I said, what's left? But they're tough, and they want to fight. And they're calling, they're saying, how do we make a deal? I said, you're being a little bit late, and we want to fight now more than they do. We've had 47 years, depending on the way you count it, but 47 years of horror with this group. And, when you see somebody walking down the street without their legs, without the arms, whose face is so badly affected and hurt, it mostly came from 95% Soleimani and Iran, and we, other presidents, lived with it. I didn't live with it, and so our people are doing a great job. Again, the greatest military anyone's seen.
So finally, one thing has been established. Iran is tough. They have been preparing for this war many years ago. They invested so much on, arms and ammunition. The drones they have today, which is a very cheap drone, is very difficult to intercept. Their ballistic missiles, both the short-range and the long-range ballistic missiles, they have been, working tirelessly to get to this level of strength. However, with the combined special air forces of the United States of America and that of Israel, they have succeeded in decapitating, Iranian forces to a very large extent. Yes, not completely yet, but to a very large extent. Like I said from the previous videos, Iran will fight to survive. They will fight to prove a point that they are powerful. And the United States of America will fight alongside with Israel to make sure that the military operation, the military objective for this very operation, this very action is established, which according to the Israeli Prime Minister, that this war is a means to an end, not an end to a means. You know what I mean? So the objective is to ensure that Iran does not progress further in arming themselves with nuclear warheads, having the capacity to produce ballistic missiles, both the short range and the long range, which will pose a very big threat, not only to the Middle East, but sponsorship of radical, Islamic jihadist terrorist group across the globe, whether you like it or not. There are people sponsoring all of these terrorists, operating, especially within the Sahel. Having established that, concerning the drone that Iran is currently using, which is a Shahed 136 or 139, which is very powerful, very cheap drone that is less than $5,000. Unfortunately for them, United States of America has copied this very technology. They picked some pieces of it from Ukraine-Russian war, and then through reverse engineering was able to even upgrade that very drone. And currently, US has what they call the Lucas drone, which cost about $20,000. And the funny thing about this very new drone from USA is that the cost of intercepting and destroying this drone is more expensive than the cost of the drone itself. And as we speak, that very drone has been deployed down to Iran. Is also waging war against them. So the United States of America has launched several attacks, several strikes against Iranian ballistic missile, underground storage, underground manufacturing facilities, and all of that. And USA is not interested in sending troops, boot on ground in Iran. Rather, they are trying to do that by proxy, by, getting this Iraqi Kurdish team involved, which, some reports are already saying that they are already there. Some are saying they are not there yet. So it's a very dicey time. There is no doubt, not acknowledging the fact that Iran also has a very strong military, up to about 600,000 servicemen. However, United States of America possesses 1.3 million servicemen. So if you now begin to talk about engaging a full-blown war, it will be disastrous. Iran may not be able to survive. But this is not a full-blown war, like I said in my previous videos. It's more like a means to an end, not an end to a means. Basically focusing on decapitation of Iran, their capacity in producing these dangerous weapons and all of that. So, but ultimately, just as China is stepping in with their special envoy for bargain on how to de-escalate and then chart a new course of peace, I sincerely hope that people like Putin, the Russian president, will also come up, because the world needs to be peaceful. If every country becomes at liberty to produce any type of nuclear warhead that they so wish, before you know it, that will be the end of humanity. That will be the end of mankind. That will be the end of civilization. The moment these weapons get into the hands of these radical terrorists we are talking about, before you know it, they will begin to launch it, because they believe that they will be welcomed into paradise with 72 virgins and all of that. I'm not trying to mock any religion, but we have to state things the way it is. Otherwise, the terrorists we have in Nigeria, what are they fighting for? What is their objective? What is their reason? Why they're continuously unaliving people day in, day out? So, somebody has to rise up to the responsibility. That is exactly what United States of America is doing today. Well, like I said, peace is more better than living in pieces. Let peace reign. I am praying fervently in my heart that a time will come sooner or later when there will be a roundtable discussion, so that all of this, rascalities going on will come to an end. Day your day, make I day my day. Don't produce nuclear weapons. Don't produce ballistic missiles. What are you doing with every of those things? Now that USA has tested their doomsday missile, which is called the ICBM, Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. It is called Minuteman 3. So 1 second man, or one minute man. You know what I mean? Which is a very powerful, strong deterrent to any type of nuclear warheads across the globe, to make sure that their functionality is still intact, and also begin to look at how to improve on those, missiles technologically. Even though USA is already working for a replacement to that very doomsday intercontinental ballistic missiles. So we hope that